Every day of my life, that's 86 years now, I've trod these steps with growing difficulty. I used to run up and down them, but no more. These steps lead down to where I live and where I have lived, except for a couple of years spent in England and Australia, here in the house where I was born.
This home has been called Peter's Museum, and indeed its walls hold the story of his life, fragments of his existence, of people who've worked with him, or inspired him, or taught him. These walls carry his memories and his inspiration. They stand for Peter Coates. Here you'll find the art of his children, fellow pupils like famed English cartoonist Nick Garland, who went to Rongotai College with him in the 50s, and great artistic influences like Donald McIntyre, Gordon Crook, and friend Raymond Boyce, with whom he made documentaries like this one.
Right from the beginning, I think I wanted to be in the theatre. Strange, but there you are. And this is what is hard for other people to understand, and I never deviated from that.
In a career lasting over 60 years, Raymond Boyce has been a key figure in every branch of New Zealand theatre, from design and direction to administration and mentoring, including involvement in over 300 productions of plays, ballets and operas for major New Zealand professional companies. Raymond's added much to the understanding and pleasure of New Zealand audiences in a career where, he says, luck played an important role.
I was very lucky indeed. I always say that my life is founded on serendipity.
Since coming to New Zealand in March 1954 from Britain, Raymond's given New Zealand theatre much. But what's the theatre given him?
Given to me? Oh, the greatest pleasure in life, and also the understanding of the world. The whole business of design, okay, you have all the technique of drawing and model making and God knows what else, but it is so much a discovery, because you have to find the intentions of the playwright, not what the playwright wrote on the page, but what's behind it all the time, which means you've got to know the world of the playwright and how the playwright was living in that world and how that world taught that playwright to make whatever his decisions had to make.
These are memories of people, events, places and pets. Dogs painted by me, my family and my great-grandfather, and the sculptural work of friends like Grant Tilley. Old pets that still remain on these walls today, and the pets of today, Indy, Ruby and Loki, and the ashes of departed friends, Chanel, Rogue and Romeo. I even made a film about dogs, or should I say a very special dog.
A piece of paper, a pencil, a spark of imagination, and out pops that lovable little dog from Donaldson's Dairy.
Harry McClary, Harry McClary, Harry McClary, who comes from Donaldson's Dairy. Harry McClary.
For over 15 years, Linley Dodd's irresistible characters have captured the imagination and the love of millions of children all around the world.
I like the books because there's always something that makes you laugh in them. I like the books because the pictures describe everything in the book and they're funny. I like them because they do lots of, because the books are interesting.
When it all boils down, her books are an infectious blend of paint, poetry and personality.
I've known a lot of dogs like Harry McClary. I think we all know dogs with springing knees. I have had several friends with Australian Terriers, so I suppose that kind of dog was at the back of my mind, and I stuck the idea in the ideas book about 3 years before I actually used it. So I was supposed to be doing Wake Up Bear for my publishers. And we discovered just at the 11th hour that there was a book in Britain which had just come out called Wake Up Bear, It's Christmas. And that was panic stations at the publishers and at home. And Anne Mallinson said to me, well, what can we do instead? Quick, think of something. So that was where Harry McCleary suddenly stepped in.
Harry McCleary.
But Harry McCleary is only one of her successes. Linley Dodd has written and illustrated 15 books in 19 years. They've been published in New Zealand, Great Britain, the United States, Canada and Australia. With over 1 million books sold, she probably ranks as New Zealand's best-selling author. It's a great success story for the ex-art teacher.
I suppose it's instinct, some of it, but it's also sheer hard work. And I'm always very much aware that children will pick up any sham or, they're very good critics of work, and they're just going to be bored to tears with something that doesn't work.
Hello. What works with children? What doesn't? Linley finds that out through personal contact with her audience. She tests out her ideas using the New Zealand Book Council's Writers in Schools programme. It's great fun for the children and for the author.
It's a two-way thing, that. It works wonderfully well if it's done well. It works well for both the author and the children, because, of course, for us, we're getting touching base with our consumers. And for the schools, they're getting to see that there is actually a face behind the books they're reading. And I think it works beautifully. If it, the whole thing goes well, it works beautifully both ways. Out of the gate and off for a walk with Harry McCleary from Johnston's Dairy. And Hercules Morse as big as a horse with Harry McCleary from Johnston's Dairy.
These sessions have gone on from Tauranga to Greymouth and overseas. Her audience is worldwide, and when she meets them, Linley's sure to learn something about her work that she hasn't necessarily realised before.
Well, I ran up against the fact that Harry McCleary belongs in all sorts of countries, and finding that when I went to Glasgow and read to a bunch of Glasgow school children that he was correctly Harry McCleary. And they recited it beautifully with me and with a lovely Scots accent, and I ended up reading it in a Scots accent, I'm sure, by the time I'd finished, because it was absolutely infectious.
Another room, more memories, more friends, recordings, pictures, lots of books. Including one about a man who influenced Peter greatly at Wellington Teachers' College, John Drawbridge. John was searching for direction, as was Peter. And this etching by Drawbridge deserves a special place in his TV room. He showed Peter where to go.
During the 1960s and 70s, the dramatic murals of John Drawbridge gave strong visual reinforcement to our growing national awareness. Architects, for the first time since the war, had the opportunity in state buildings to give our country a more imaginative image, and commissions gave John's work a high profile in Britain, Japan, and New Zealand. In Wellington, the Parliamentary Beehive was given a spectacular semicircular mural, a work that's based on symbols derived from the New Zealand landscape. For John Drawbridge, it was a commission that gave him a chance to experiment with new materials. The ribbed aluminium surface, 55 metres long by 5 metres high, makes it the largest work of art in the country. In 1970, a Drawbridge light play mural was part of our Osaka Expo presentation in Japan. Here, rods of perspex move and glow and throw shadows in ever-changing light. Earlier, in 1962, a mural in oil decorated the New Zealand High Commission in London. Today, it's been rehoused at the National Archives in Wellington.
I was in London and I was doing this mural for New Zealand House, and the architect was Robert Matthew, who designed the festival hall, and he was a great architect. Well, Robert Matthew said to me, "Have you got any Maori blood in you?" And as far as I know, I haven't. But he said, "Well, your work is very different to ours in England. Although I'm of European background, there are a whole lot of things that contribute to that. And your in the way you grow up, probably. Okay, we can be very conscious of the light of New Zealand and all the landscape and the bush and these things and the sea. But there are other things too which contribute to the kind of psychology of being a New Zealander. And I think that is very different to being a European or to being an Englishman. And after all, this is, whether we're Maori or Pākehā, this is our home.
Home for John Drawbridge is Island Bay in Wellington. The rugged landscape and the changing moods of Wellington's coastline are inspirational. To both John and his wife, the sculptor Tanya Ashkin, the sea has an irresistible fascination.
Well, it's not just the way it looks, it's the sound of it and the feel of it and the sense of the movement of the sea. It's not just looking out to sea, it's looking across and around the coast and seeing just how the waves are breaking on rocks further away, and whether, as we've had over the last few days, a lot of snow on the Orongorongas, how much that's melted overnight or whether more has come.
Mountains too inspired John. He was 18 when invited by filmmaker Brian Brake to prepare a visual storyboard for a film called Aspiring. He travelled to the remote Matukituki Valley with Brian, poet James K. Baxter, and composer Douglas Lilburn.
Being in this remote area, as it was and still is, with these extraordinary people for 6 weeks, and sort of sitting on rocks and looking at the river and talking to Douglas Lilburn about philosophy, or he did the talking, I think, because James Baxter too, with discussions late into the night in the Aspiring hut, in the bad weather, sitting by a fire. It was a most amazing event in the formative sense, because we were stuck in this isolated area with these extraordinary people. So those influences weren't just landscape, but they were ideas.
John's art is an art of the romantic, mystical, Turneresque, lyrical.
I am constantly challenged by the fact that colours alongside each other, one's going to come forward and the other's going to go back. Something's going to happen in their relationships to each other. So you're no longer dealing with a flat surface, you're creating an illusion. I remember looking at Utrillo's paintings of street scenes in Paris, and it's very much easier to move into a Utrillo street scene because the people are not facing you. You see the backs of the people, so you tend to walk up the street behind them in the painting, which is very different to Edvard Munch, where the screaming figure comes shooting across out at you as a confrontation.
This is another Grant Tilley masterpiece. On the door, the sign reads, Peter Coates' Cabinet of Dreams.
Over his 35-year television career, Peter made more than 400 films. These are 120 of them, including one that he made with noted New Zealand tenor Peter Bailey, who sang for years at the Vienna Volksopera.
It was Vienna's music that brought me here in 1966 as a visitor from New Zealand to this city of Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven, Schubert, Strauss and Mahler, to stay on as a member of the Vienna Volksoper. Come with me on a musical tour of this city of music.
Rugby features on these walls, of course, mainly in the TV room. This is a picture Ivan Bredanovic took of my demonstration of a dive pass for one of his coaching posters. My mother and father were both rugby enthusiasts, and here is a picture of them all dolled up for the 1921 match at Athletic Park. Here my son, Mark, and wife, Annie, are on the western bank at the last game at Old Athletic Park. This is the official photo of the New Zealand Rugby Football Union Committee, responsible for the 1992 Rugby Union Centennial, which I was a member of. While working with the New Zealand Rugby Union, I produced 7 coaching films and a 4-part history of rugby in New Zealand called Men of the Silver Fern.
Rugby may never have happened in New Zealand if it hadn't been for Charles Munro. He was sent to England in 1867 to complete his education at Christ's College, Finchley. rugby proved to be an important part of that education. On returning home 3 years later, 19-year-old Charles organised the first game of rugby in New Zealand. It took place at the Botanical Gardens in Nelson, between the college and the town. The date was the 14th of May, 1870. The teams had been used to playing Australian rules, imported with the gold miners from Bendigo. For the new game, they elected to play 18 aside, 10 forwards, 3 half-backs, 3 three-quarters, and 2 full-backs. The object was to score goals. These could be gained by a place kick or a drop kick, even a speculator from the field of play. A newspaper reporter at the game was rather confused by what he saw.
Silence and inactivity are suddenly converted into a noisy, rushing, shouting crew. Almost as soon as the ball is amongst the town players, the college have followed up and are locked in a scrimmage. The ball is seen in one place, then another, while the players run round aimlessly or wait eagerly for the ball to be thrown in from touch. The whole field is spurred on with cries of offside and touch it down. Finally, the ball is kicked through the college goal by Clark and the game terminates in favour of the town club.
It was fun, but it was chaotic. Nobody watching it could have possibly dreamt that within 30 years, rugby would become a national obsession, or that men playing it dressed in black and wearing the silver fern would forge an international reputation for sporting excellence. 120 years later, it seems a miracle that anything happened at all.
Also, in lighter mood, I produced this rugby comedy series in front of a live audience at the Avalon Television Centre. It was somewhat controversial.
Let's get a scum down here now. Front row. Killer, Tom, Skinny. Locked in. Terry on the back. Flankers. Right, Gummy on that side. Where's Brian?
Oh, he'll be here, sis. He always arrives late.
Right, get that. Get that foot back, Killer.
Hell, Tom, you better not let the ref see those bloody boots.
You set pretty?
Almost.
Well, we're 5 minutes late already. I'll do the boot inspection in here. It's too wet outside.
Okay, you guys, come on. Line up then. Come on.
Here. You know you're not allowed to wear rings.
Peter's children, Mark and Omar, played sport and won Most Improved awards. They share a shelf with sprinting cups won by their mum, Annie, back in Burma. Here's early work by Mark. And this is a recent card he made for Peter's birthday. Omar won a gold medal in the prestigious Shankar's Children's Art Competition in India and painted this family portrait with pets that's hung by the back door. Both Mark and Omar got graphic design degrees at Massey University. Here are photos of young Omar taken by Ans Westra at a barbecue at Mirek Smisek's home. Peter made films on Mirek and Ans Westra.
When I photograph, I really try to get to know that person through my photographing and almost get under his skin, get to feel what the person is feeling.
Through her lens, she observes our moments of joy, of introspection, of sadness, insecurity and warmth, unposed, unsolicited. Observations of someone sensitive and caring.
I think it's important that people understand each other, and possibly photographs can explain something more sharply and open up ways of communication between people.
Since the 1950s, when she first arrived in New Zealand, freelance photographer Ans Westra has built up a body of work about New Zealanders that gives us a unique record of an era.
I would say that historically the body of work that she's created about New Zealand is the equivalent of the kind of work that Dorothea Lange did in the United States, especially during the 30s, but also the 40s and 50s as well. And in the sense that we think of the American Depression through the pictures of Dorothea Lange, in the sense that we think of, pre-Second World War Britain, in the terms of photographs by people like Bill Brandt and Bert Hardy, and in the sense that we think of France, pictures of France, almost inevitably it's pictures by Henri Cartier-Bresson that come to mind. Well, it's in the same way that the Westra photographs, I think, have permeated this sort of national consciousness of ours.
Ans Westra's photography, like the work of Dorothea Lange, Bill Brandt and Henri Cartier-Bresson, is based on a close observation of people. And like them, she has deliberately chosen black and white photography as her medium.
Black and white photography is something I did feel comfortable in right from the beginning. It is a totally different medium from working in color. In color, you've got to be aware of the colors, and you've got to make them the main point of interest in your photographs. In my photographs, the abstractions are the most interesting, the feelings of the people, the emotions, the things that are happening. And color would only take away from that.
To observe Ans at work, we've asked her to record for us the first 2 days in the life of a Kampuchean family in New Zealand. She waits here at Mangere Airport with Kim Oon Ung, the grandmother of the family she has chosen, surrounded by others who've had to wait up to 10 years for relatives from the refugee camps of Thailand. All of Kim Oon's family are now in New Zealand, except her eldest son, Eng Chaeong, who's about to arrive with his wife and their 4 boys. The tears and joy of family reunion are the first impressions of a new country and a new life that Ans Westra will record.
I feel very much an obligation to be recording history, but seeing it through a human element, through the way people live in the times they're in, not through news events, things that make news. I prefer to look at it from the way people react to what's happening around them. That's what I try to photograph, and I try to bring out also a sort of a universality in people, a unique sort of sameness that binds them and that makes them perhaps better understand one another.
The main rooms quickly reveal Peter's love for ceramics and collecting souvenirs from many countries visited on television work, or just indulging his love of experiencing the exotic.
This Indonesian mask came from Bali, as did this wonderful carving and these shadow puppets. This sculpture came from Lombok, and these harps from Burma, as did these impressive string puppets.
Here are also stories of war. This work by Nick Garland features Nelson's death on the Victory, where Peter's ancestor Joseph Coates served at Trafalgar as a carpenter. And here's Peter's family visit to that ship. This prefabricated paddle steamer, the Waimarigi, was assembled by great-grandfather Billy Coates on the banks of the Honganui River. And Peter's Uncle Jack flew this Royal Navy flying boat in World War I. Omar's husband, Phil Chan, added to the walls his uncle, who died in the Second World War. And we can read the record of service in that war of Peter's Uncle George. Peter was never called up, but did his compulsory military training at Papakura Camp in 1974. Annie, too, had compulsory military experience back in Myanmar. Peter offered his perspective on war in this painting, exhibited in the New Zealand Academy galleries.
I went to Burma at one stage and worked for television there, the English channel, and working with the military was diabolically difficult. And what's more, you're dealing with not only incompetent people, but you're talking about cruel people, a combination of cruelty and incompetence. The military in Burma are cruel, as you can see what I've done with caricature of the face. Caricature in a negative way, of course. And the Buddha up there, he has crying blood and his hands are covered with blood. But of course Buddhism is the main religion in Burma, and these are the students. Down here are the students as they are shot, and the blood is pouring all over the road. And there's the date, 8th of 888.
So Peter, why do you paint?
Well, there's two basic reasons. One is I like the physical nature of painting and the mixing of colours and things like that. It's a joy to me. It's a bit linked a little bit to calligraphy. But the other reason is because the family has a long tradition and a continued tradition of interest in the graphic arts. So right back to the 1860s and before that.
Mm-hmm.
So in reality, I've got family tradition plus the joy of being able to paint and splash paint around. My wife will tell you all about that.
Peter travelled the world making TV programmes, and that's reflected in his collection. Omar benefited too. These dolls were gathered in visits to myriad places. Ceramics remain Peter's greatest love. His excellent collection was mostly given by the artists that he's made films on. His collection begins with the work of Doreen Blumhardt, who taught him at Wellington Teachers College and was key in the arts-centred education promoted by Clarence Beebe and Peter Fraser in the 1940s and 50s.
In 1991, the New Zealand Academy of Fine Arts held a retrospective exhibition of the work of one of New Zealand's most important educators and ceramicists, Doreen Blumhardt. Doreen has, for 50 years, been an important figure in art education, and she's also a potter of distinction.
And if Doreen Blumhardt will permit me, tonight, through her fine retrospective exhibition, she has yet again demonstrated that she is the fine old lady of pottery, if not the grande dame.
Dame Kath Tizard presented her with the Governor-General's Award in recognition of her work in these fields.
The old back green one, the other one, were in Dunedin in the very first exhibition ever in Society. Isn't that fun?
It was a time of celebration, and for Doreen an opportunity to enjoy old friends and renew acquaintances with the scores of pots she calls her children.
Now, some of those who lent the pieces have said they felt bereft without their children. But for me, of course, it's a joyous reunion with my children, some of which I haven't seen for many years. They haven't changed with age, and it's most rewarding to know that they're in homes where they really are dearly loved.
Doreen Blumhardt was a pioneer in the New Zealand craft pottery movement of the 1950s. Her work is bold and spectacular and bears the influence of the Japanese masters she so fondly loves. She has won a Wattie Award for the book Craft New Zealand, the definitive work on the subject, and although she retired nearly 20 years ago from her role as head of the art department at Wellington Teachers College, she still enjoys the enthusiasm and vitality of children and their art.
If you're going to use red, you see that's the colour?
Yep.
And the black? Are you quite pleased with the background? What's that? Is that a brown colour?
Yeah, it's brown skin. I wanted to do a brown skin colour.
Brown skin person?
Yeah.
For her work in these fields, she has received many honours. Doreen was brought up in Whangarei in the 1920s. Her father was German and was a broadly educated, cultured man. As far back as she can remember, Doreen was always interested in the arts and in teaching.
And we had a little school orchestra, and I played the violin in the school orchestra. And old Mr. Richardson, who was our art teacher, he continued the old tradition of setting up still life or his coat, hat and what have you, anything that was an object in the room. And, well, I seemed to come out top honours in the high school as well. But I always wanted to become a teacher. That was my ambition. I always felt that teaching was something I really wanted to do more than anything else.
In 1939, she went to Teachers College in Christchurch. Her talents as a teacher were quickly recognised, and she was singled out to help redefine the role of art in the curriculum by Dr. Beebe, then Director General of Education.
And the first thing he said to me, he said, "This is wartime, there are no materials in the schools. You must find out where we can get materials to work with. That's your first duty."
Doreen became a woman with a mission.
My work then was largely in going out to find people who could make paints, people who could produce suitable wool for us for weaving, what we could find in the way of paper. There was none in the schools. And so much of my time was going around and talking to people like Buntings to make brushes suitable for schools, long-handled ones with large brush end, so that children could, in fact, have a large brush to work with.
The other side of Doreen's job was to demonstrate to teachers ways to use art within the curriculum. The doctrine of Herbert Reed was sweeping education outside New Zealand in the 40s. Education through art, rather than education in art, was the catchword. The unique quality of children's art was being reassessed and redefined.
Another inspiration for me is my book collection, a vast collection of material based on theatre, art, philosophy and New Zealand writing, like the poems of Dennis Glover and Alistair Campbell, who I made an award-winning film with about Te Raukaha on Kapiti Island called Sanctuary of Spirits.
This island is alive with ghosts. Tonight, every leaf is an ear attuned to your heartbeat. Every stick a spear, gripped by a crouching figure. Their eyes glint on the moonlit hillsides, and their oiled bodies, bending towards you in their hundreds, gleam like flax. Listen, what is that sound? Like the sound of waves on the rocks. But there is no wind. Even the sea is asleep. Listen. The sea begins to wake in its wide bed and whispers of war. A thousand paddles shatter the drowning moon. A bridge of war canoes spans the troubled sea between Kapiti and the mainland. It is no use. Numbers cannot save you now. Nothing can save you but your swift paddles. Te Raukaha is a god, and Kapiti is his backbone.
Kapiti, what does the name mean to you? If you live on the Wellington coast of New Zealand, it probably means a great deal. But if you don't, it probably doesn't mean very much. Many people feel that Kapiti is a special island, perhaps even a sacred island, and I share that feeling. I've written many poems about Kapiti, and I've brooded on its violent associations with the great Maori chief Turapaha from my home at Pukuru Bay behind me here. But I've never been there. Why not? Perhaps because I was afraid that it wouldn't come up to my expectations. Perhaps I wanted Kapiti to remain a remote and mysterious island, a source of inspiration for my poems, and a symbol, perhaps, of the untamed regions of the imagination. But curiosity has got the better of me, and I'm on my way over there now. And I must admit, I'm a bit apprehensive about what I'll find there.
At Kapiti Island we made friends with the lovely Kakas. At Mount Robert and Arthur's Pass it was with the cheeky Kias.
Be friendly to the little Kia whenever it should come and see you. It lives on roots and fruit and nuts and bolts and nails from alpine huts, which paralyze its little guts. Poor fella.
TV critic Catherine de la Roche called this film the best animal film since Lord Snowdon's Love of a Kind.
The films Peter most enjoyed working on were those that publicised the work of great New Zealand artists. And the great train enthusiast and ceramic artist Barry Brickell, a key man in the development of truly indigenous New Zealand art.
As a kid I was a pyro, I don't know that pyromaniac is the word. I was a pyrophile, a lover of fire. But I was always running away from someone who told me not to do it. Little boy, you know, you mustn't play with matches. Where I lived when I was a kid, which was in Devonport on the north shore of Auckland, and not far from there was the most marvellous industry going. It was a coal-fired gasworks and fire brickworks combined. And that was a magic land for me when I was a kid. Absolute magic land. There was fire in various kinds of furnaces, clay being made into all sorts of different objects, bricks, tiles, pipes. There was the smells of the vertical retorts when the coal was charged into them, and there was bituminous coking coal from the South Island, and if you ever smelt the stuff when it's burning, it's the most aromatic fuel I've ever had the pleasure to smell. And then the red hot coke being discharged from the retorts into trolleys whose metal sides got red hot and was pulled along to the quenching chimney, where cold water was suddenly sprayed on top of all this and making huge billowing masses of steam swirling up through a chimney. It was very, very beautiful. All these things went on in riveted forms of tanks, pipes, boilers, and of course the gentle pulse of a small steam engine, quietly 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, pumping gas very quietly.
Here are the faces of many people on the walls of my home. Friends, colleagues, all who have contributed in some way to my growth. Vladimir Ashkenazi, Gillian Weir, Donald McIntyre, Kurita Kanawa, Clive Rebel, John Matheson, Rangi Mario Hesset, Graham Clifford, Malvina Major, Tim Hawley, Tony Benful. Tim and Tony have worked together many times, but this example is one of the best. The famous duet from Bizet's opera, The Pearl Fishers.
After so many days, so many lonely hours, while we have lived apart from each other, and now what joy is ours, reunited by Brahma. Tell me, have you always been faithful to your vow? Is it a friend I see again? Or are you traitor of that deep love of old? I feel I now am master. It is evening, and there in the warm scented air stand the Brahmins, their faces illumined in light. Impassively they slowly call the crowd to prayer. As the people meet for prayer in the scented evening air, in the depths of the temple, adorned with flowers and gold, A woman now appears. Have I seen her before? Now the crowd bows before her. I gaze in awe and wonder as she stands in the shadows. Now she opens her arms. Her veil she slowly raises. How fair her face is. The people where she and my eyes, alas, seek mirth in vain. She is gone. She has gone. But, like a flame in my heart, what a strange new fire is burning. What is this fire which consumes me? Your hand rejects my hand. Your hand rejects my hand. A new love our hearts have stolen has changed friendship to hate. No, there's nothing that can part us. Nothing. There's nothing that can part us. Nothing. Two friends we will still remain. We will still remain. We will still remain. I swear, two friends we will still remain. All it is the goddess of beauty who descends from heaven. I can promise her beauty with a sacred soul abound. One faith and one true devotion bind us forevermore. And now it comes, as one it goes, I am united
And here we are in the last room we'll visit, the bedroom, where Peter was born, as were his brother Maurice and sister Joy, in the 1930s when his mother believed in home birth. Peter and his wife Annie share this room today. They were married in 1983. Their romance flowered from a photo that he took of Annie when he visited Burma in 1980. After 3 years, hundreds of letters and lots of commitment, they were finally married in the All Saints Anglican Church in Maymeo. Annie has certainly achieved much in her 40 years here. She's a much-loved Wellingtonian, JP and QSM. Their children weren't born in this room, but the house has been a key element in their upbringing, especially the family area outside with its barbecue and back garden. Today, it's a garden area for Annie and a place where Peter paints and feeds the local tuis, kakas and sparrows. And perhaps his story has echoes of the characters in The Magic Flute, produced by Peter for Television New Zealand in the 1980s, Papageno and Papagena.
Papagena, we do not be blind forever. As my wife you leave me never. I'll leave you never, leave you never. What a joy now it will be. If our gods will hear our pleading. We're needing, yes, a family we're needing. Lots of baby birds to rear. Little birds. Little birds. Little birds, and we will build a nest to six, and we can raise a family. Oh, the little papageno. And the little papageno. Papageno, 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 papageno. Our family tree will not contain us. With such a number of papagenos, such a number of papagenos, such a number of papagenos, such a number of papagenos. Our little nest will not contain us. With such a Papageno, 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 with a name on his family. Papageno, 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 what a blessing it will be. The tree is big enough to see what a family. Papageno, 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 papageno.
Such is Peter's home, his museum, his memories, his life.